Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ortal. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I'm the co-founder of Glittering Minds, and I'm very passionate about creative thinking and innovation and design thinking. And this is why I'm working on empowering educators and parents from across the globe to help their children develop their creative thinking, innovation, problem-solving skill, critical thinking, all these wonderful 21st century skills. And I'm doing that through design thinking. I'm also an author and a speaker. So I wrote books that, again, empower teachers to create an innovative learning environment in the classroom and for parents to do the same at their own home. And today I'm going to talk about design thinking, which is the 21st century pedagogy, and soon you'll see why. So all of you, whether you're teachers or parents, but especially talk today about teachers, as I've been working with teachers for a long time, you can amplify your impact. You can create tomorrow's leaders and change makers with design thinking. And I'll tell you about design thinking by sharing a story with you. And this is a story about Doug Diaz. And Doug Diaz was an industrial designer at General Electric for over 20 years. And he was very proud of what he was doing because he was designing medical equipment. And he knew that this machine that he's designing helped save millions of people's lives across the globe. So he was very proud working for General Electric and doing that. And therefore, in 1970, when the MRI machine was invented, firstly, Doug realized what it means for the medical field and how it's going to revolution the medical field as it's going to save so many lives across the globe. And secondly, he wanted to be the one designing this machine for General Electric. So he submitted an application for himself and his team to design the MRI machine for General Electric. And he was very, very happy when they chosen to do so. And he spent with his team many, many, many weeks designing it. And at the end, this is the design they came up with. This is the MRI machine that General Electric has designed. And so once it was implemented at hospitals, Doug was very curious to see how to see it operating at the hospital. So he was calling a hospital nearby and made arrangement to come over and see it in action. So he went to that hospital and he was standing there outside of the MRI room, looking at the corridor. And then he saw at the corridor a little girl walking, and with one hand she was holding her father's hand, and with her other hand she was holding her mother's hand. And that little girl was crying. And then she looked at her father and said, "Dad, do I really have to do it? I don't want to do it. Please don't make me do it. I don't want to go through it." And Doug was looking and listening, and he saw her father looking at her, very emotional, very teary. And he said to his girl, "I'm so sorry, my darling, but we have to go through it. We spoke about it already. There is no other way. I'm so sorry. You have to be very, very brave." And Doug was looking at this girl with her parents, all walking towards him, all very emotional. And the little girl was crying and was very anxious. And suddenly he was horrified to realize that they walking towards the MRI room because that little girl is going to be scanned there. And she was horrified with the idea that she needed to do that. And so Doug went to speak with the medical staff about it. And the medical staff, they told him that children are actually very afraid of the MRI machine. And because they're so afraid, they can't really lie still during that examination. And so 80% of children that needed to go through an MRI scan has to be sedated. And that's not a good thing, as firstly, it makes the whole procedure riskier for the children. It also more costly, as it costs a lot of money to bring an anesthetic in and do all of that. And also what it means also that less people can be examined over a period of 24 hours, because once you need to sedate a patient, it takes longer, the whole scanning process. And so it wasn't good news for anyone. And at that day, actually, because of that experience, Doug had an epiphany. Suddenly that day he realized that he's designing for people. He suddenly realized that over the many years that he's been designing medical equipment, all he thought about is designing a stronger machine, sleeker, durable, more powerful. All he was thinking about the machine itself and how it's going to operate. And he never stopped to think about the patient that's coming to be examined or scanned by this medical equipment. He never stopped to think how they feel about it. Because a patient, at the end of the day, they don't care how strong the machine is, how slick it is, how durable it is. They care about how they feel when they enter the room and need to go through that medical examination. And so Doug thought that he has to do something about it, because he definitely didn't intend for children to be so scared of his design, of his creation. And then Doug remembered about something he heard about at university. He heard about design thinking, which is a human-centric approach to problem solving. And he thought to himself, okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna solve this problem using design thinking. And so at a high level, for those of you not familiar with design thinking is an approach to problem solving that enables us to come with innovative solutions to problems with the users or the people who face a problem. So it's important to understand that the importance of with the users, because we're solving it with them instead of for them. So they're part of the process of understanding the problem and finding solutions. And this is what you see in front of you is the double diamond process, which is what we use in design thinking to solve problem. And we start with the first diamond, which is understanding the problem. And often as humans, we're not comfortable with problems. Often when we encounter a problem, we kind of rush to solve it because we feel uncomfortable staying with it for a long period of time. You know, having a problem that is not solved can be quite uncomfortable. We're not comfortable with the ambiguity, with not knowing what's going to happen, how we're going to solve it. And so often we rush in to solve it without spending enough time on understanding the problem. And so in design thinking, we actually spend a lot of time within the problem space. We sit with the problem for a long time and we really explore it. And we started with the research. We diverge, and that means that we open our mind and gather as much information as we can on the problem for many different people and in many different ways. We perform interviews, for example, with experts, with people who face the problem. We might perform observation to see what happened when people interact in that scenario. We might read some research papers, do some research online. So the research can involve many different things. And often we also going to look at other industries that have similar problems to see how they're solving that problem. So to get inspiration from someone else who already dealt with a similar problem. And then once we finish doing an extensive research, this is where it is time to converge and drive insights from all that information. Because it's one thing to have a lot of information and another thing to understand what it means and to drive insights from it. So we look at all the information and we look for patterns and themes and point of difference. And when we finish that work, we get a good understanding on the problem. We have a lot of insights into it. And sometimes during that stage, we actually find that the problem that we started with is actually not the problem that we need to work on, because maybe we find that the cause of the problem is different and there is a different problem to solve, or maybe there is a better problem to solve. So that can happen also at that stage. And only then, once we really have deep understanding on the problem, this is when we diverge again and coming up with ideas for solutions. And this is where we brainstorm ideas with a diverse group of people without any judgment or assessment. We diverge in again. We don't want to assess ideas. We just want to get as many ideas as possible to build on each other ideas. And once we finish coming up with many ideas, this is where it's time to converge again and decide on the top 2-3 ideas that we're going to prototype and test. So the idea here and in design thinking is to relatively quickly and cheaply come up with prototypes that we can test with the users to get feedback on the solution. And that feedback might tell us that that solution is not good, it's not working, and then it's great because we can scrap it and move to the next idea. or we can find out that this idea can actually work. It can be a good solution, but we need to tweak it. We need to change it in different way to make it better. And so it's kind of an iterative loop of improvement until we're happy that this solution actually solves the problem and it's suitable for the users, and then it's time to implement it. So what Doug was doing, he was going through that process in order to find solution to this problem. And he started by researching. So he spoke with medical staff at hospital, with patients and their parents, with psychologists. He looked at other industries that service children that might also need to create an environment where the children can come and relax and to see how they solve this problem to get inspiration. So Doug and his team performed quite a deep research to understand this problem. And then they converged to get insight on this problem. And then it was time for them to diverge again and come up with ideas for solution. And this is where Doug invited a diverse group of people to come up with ideas, because each one of us is kind of limited with the ideas we can come up with. And when we have people who think differently, this is where we can really come up with innovative solutions, because each one come up with different ideas, and together when we merge these ideas or mix them together, this is where we get much better ideas. And so Doug and his team came up with many ideas, and then they decided on one idea which they wanted to test and prototype. So are you ready to see what came out, what idea they came up with? So this is the original design of the MRI machine by General Electric, as you remember. And now I'll show you what their idea was. So this is the MRI room. This is the prototype they designed, and they decided to transform it into a story, an experience for the children. So instead of entering a room and being examined by a machine, the children have been told a story. And in this story, for example, they be told that they're gonna enter a yellow submarine and gonna go on a marine adventure, and they're gonna dive deep into the sea and see different creatures, and they have to lie still and watch and see what creatures they're gonna find and discover. And so the whole experience was completely different. As you can see, the whole room has been transformed, and the MRI machine itself looks completely different. It doesn't look intimidating anymore. And this was one of the rooms that was designed. This is another design. There was a beach experience where, again, the children were told a different story, that they're going to the beach and they're going to have a lot of fun there. And my favorite one, which I'm going to share with you now, is the pirate adventure. And this was a story about how the children were told that they were going into a pirate ship, and they need to lie really, really still while they're in the pirate ship. And when they reach to the island, a treasure chest is going to wait for them with so many wonderful treasures. And it was a huge success. And Doug actually went to the hospital to see it in action. And he was waiting again outside the MRI room when he saw a 60-year-old girl stepping outside of the MRI room with her mom after being scanned there. And the little girl was looking at her mom and said, "Mom, that was so much fun. Can we come again tomorrow?" And Doug was so happy. He was probably the happiest man at that day. So they really transformed the whole experience, and based on data from the medical staff, if you remember, I shared with you that initially 80% of children needed to be sedated in order to undergo an MRI scan. And once they implemented this solution, only 20% of children needed to be sedated to undergo an MRI scan. So that was a huge success. The whole experience was transformed for most of the children. And so I have a question for you before we before I'm continuing, whether you can, what connection might you see at the moment between design thinking and teaching? Do you see any connection already? And you can unmute yourself and we can have a quick chat.
Well, I guess because each mind of a child is a different, it's a landscape. It's every child is different, so we need this design thinking to be able to adapt and be able to teach children in a way that would be effective and fun for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is so true. They're all unique and different, each child with their own way of thinking and talents and skills. And so we need to, it's not a case of one size fits all. And I agree with you. We need to find a way to speak to them in a way that is suitable for them. Okay, so I'll just continue if no one else wants to jump in. So I'm talking about great thinkers and solving problems and all of that, but why do we even need to create great thinkers? Why do we even need to transform our learning environment and come up with new ways of doing that? And so as you're probably very well aware, our world is changing so quickly, so rapidly with the advancement in technology, with artificial intelligence and machine learning. The way we live our life changes so quickly, and also the way we perform our jobs is changing. We work more and more alongside computers, and also the type of jobs that we do change all the time. Jobs that used to be there forever are disappearing, and new job types are popping up every day. For example, social media. Who thought 10 years back that a social media manager is going to be a profession, or a drone pilot, or an Uber driver, or so many new job types that didn't exist 10 years back. And when we think about children who start in primary school, for example, elementary school, they'll finish school in 15 years time, and who knows what kind of jobs are going to be there for them when they finish school. And also another thing that we need to think about is that we have more and more complex problems in our world that we need to take care of. Climate change and global warming is one that obviously it's a big problem that we need to work on. And if we look, just recently we had the COVID pandemic, which was a huge problem that we needed to solve and work with. And so we have quite a lot of complex problems that we need to solve. And in order to solve them, we need to really be great thinkers. And we need to think differently than the way we thought back when we created these problems. So we need to adopt a new way of thinking. So great thinkers are excellent problem solvers, and they're basically design thinkers because they need to go through all the process that I showed you before to really explore the problem, really understand it, come up with different ideas, try them out, see what fits, and then implementing the solution that fits most in terms of provide the best solution for the problem. And one thing I want to share, that it's very easy to use design thinking as a teaching framework. I know that teachers are working in a system that has many constraints and policies and red tape and lots of policies to adhere to and standardized testing and all of that. But still, teachers can choose how they can deliver that content, how they facilitate the learning, and design thinking is a teaching framework that you can use with any curriculum that you have. So let's look how design thinking looks in education, how it looks like in a classroom. And I'll share one project that I've done with a few classes with you. So it was an inquiry unit in science that was about natural and processed materials, where the children needed to learn different materials and their properties and all of that. And we turned it into a design thinking question, which is, how might we design suitable school uniform? Now, I don't know how it works at your part on the globe, but in Australia, all children have to wear a school uniform. And no one ever asked them what they want out of the school uniform and what's working for them. We just impose particular school uniform on them. And so this was an opportunity to give the children a question that is relevant for them, that impacts their life directly, a real world question that they can work on. And through that question, they'll learn about natural and processed materials as well. So the children started by the way, these are year 4 students that were working on this question. And they started with the first double diamond, and they started by understanding the problem. So they started by researching different materials and their property, like cotton and jeans and fleece, for example, to test how stretchy they are, whether they're water resistant, and all sorts of things. But they also done much more than that. They started to explore where are materials sourced from and who's creating these clothes that they're wearing. For example, they looked at the clothes tags and noticed that they are manufactured in Bangladesh. And they started exploring where are these factories and what's going on there. And they looked into third world countries where many clothes are produced and into the work condition in these factories. And they learned that children sometimes work in these factories as well. There is child labor. So children their own age sometimes work there and they're not going to school. And they were quite actually horrified to discover the work condition in these factories. I don't know if you ever explore that, but sometimes you see mothers with their babies in the factories and the work conditions are really, really bad. And so suddenly they realized what it means for the people who produce their clothes, what kind of environment they're in. And they also looked at the cost for the environment of growing different materials. So for example, they learned that growing cotton requires a lot of water. And actually in some places where cotton is grown, lakes have went dry and rivers have been dried because all of the water were used to water the cotton plants. So they learn a lot about the cost for the environment of growing different material that we produce clothes from. And they also interviewed other students at their school about the school uniform. How do they feel about the current school uniform? What is not working for them at the moment? What they wish they had as part of the school uniform, and so on. And they also interviewed teachers at their school to understand the teacher's point of view on school uniform. And they also interviewed their parents to understand the parents' point of view on school uniform. Because as we know, each different group have different point of view about a topic, and they provide different insights into the problem. And so they spend a lot of time doing that research. So they gain a lot of information on that problem. And then once they finished doing this research, it was time to analyze it. And so, as you can see, they turned the classroom walls into a colorful space with all the post-it notes that hold the information from the research. And this is how they were able to find themes and start to group similar information together. And so they looked into the information from the interview they performed with the parents, with the other students, with the teachers, and found similarities and differences between what the three different stakeholder groups are saying about school uniform. And they actually found out one thing that was in common between all the three different groups. They actually found out that parents, teachers, and students, all of them said that there aren't many winter items currently as part of the school uniform. And during winter, actually, the children are cold. They don't have a scarf to keep them warm, and beanie and gloves and other items, and they just cold during winter. And so this is where the children, after doing that analysis and coming up with insight on the problem, they're ready to brainstorm ideas in terms of how they're going to design their school uniform. And as you can imagine, many of them came up with ideas to design beanies and gloves and scarves and winter items. And they start working on their designs. And as I mentioned before, in design thinking, it's important to come up with prototypes quite quickly and cheaply so you can test your ideas. And we decided to bring actually a sewing machine to the classroom and help the children bring to life their designs, their creations. So on top of everything else they learned through this project, they also learn about sewing. And they actually sew themselves different items, which was wonderful to watch. And this is one of the beanies they designed. And at this school, funnily enough, the principal is bald. And so the principal was one of the people who was testing the beanie to and from school, and he provided feedback on how it feels to wear the beanie, how it keeps his head warm, etc. And so they tested the different prototypes, they tested their ideas, got feedback from different students on their ideas. And at the end, as a result of this project, one of the beanies they designed was added to the school uniform. And this is what you can see. This is one of the beanies they designed that now students can purchase. And this is great. It's really empowering for the students to know that they can drive a change within their environment. They can make a difference. They have a voice. And so it's just wonderful to know and to tell a student that purchase this beanie now, the story behind how it was created. And I want to go through the double diamond process and just go through what students learn, what skills children develop as they learn to work with this process. So when they start their research, empathize and learn, they learn a lot about research itself, how to perform a research. What different ways do I have to perform research? And if I want to interview other people, how do I go about it? They learn that they need to come up with objectives for interviews and interview questions and ask open questions and ask why to get elaborated answers. So they gain a lot of skills out of that. Also communication skills, absolutely, because they're communicating with so many people throughout this phase. And when they going through the data analysis, through the understanding phase, converging, this is where they learn data analysis and data synthesis, which is a very crucial skill to learn, especially today when we are bombarded with so much information. And often we need to sort out and make sense of all the information we see all around us everywhere. And so children at a young age can already start learning how to go about data analysis, how to make sense of so much information, how to find pattern and themes and point of difference, and really drive insights and understanding from all that information. And during that phase, actually, because they're working together, this is a very collaborative process. Design thinking is a very collaborative approach to problem solving. Then they learn to also negotiate differences of opinion, because when they sort in the information together, they don't necessarily always agree on what's similar and what is different. And this is when they start to negotiate between themselves in order to reach some agreement. And so there's a lot of communication skill and persuasion skills and learning to bridge differences. And when they move to the second diamond, find solutions, they start with brainstorming. And this is where they really learn to be creative with their thinking and to build on each other ideas. So instead of working silos, I'm just working with my ideas are the best. They learn that by collaborating and building on each other ideas, you actually come up with better solutions to the problem. And when they converge again, when they prototype and test their idea, this is where they learn, again, they practice presentation skills because they need to present their prototype. They practice communication skills because they need to ask for feedback from different users. They learn that the first idea is just a beginning, it's just a draft, and it's something they need to work on. So it's actually developed their resilience. Often I see that with students, when we start working with them, when someone providing them with a feedback, they see that as a personal attack, as if they've done something wrong, as if they're not good enough. But through design thinking, they actually learn that it's beneficial for them to seek feedback. And when someone is providing a feedback on their idea, it's not a, it doesn't reflect personally on them. It doesn't mean that they are not doing a good job. It just means that they can improve their solution and make their idea even better. So they learn to seek feedback and to see the value in that. And so this is kind of in short how many skills students develop through working with design thinking as the double diamond. And it's not just me who see all of that, all the benefit for the students, me and the teachers I'm working with. Today, there are many research papers on design thinking in a school environment as a learning framework. And there are many research papers done by many different universities that actually show the direct link between using design thinking as a teaching framework, as a pedagogy, and developing in children these 21st century skills that I mentioned before, but also much more than that, helping them develop as a well-rounded people with flexible thinking, with an open mind, with empathy to others, and believing in themselves, growing as confident people. Some of the researchers here, they actually looked in particular into the relationship between math, the use of design thinking in teaching math, and children capabilities in math. And I don't know if you're aware, but many students at some point develop kind of a fear of math. Some students at some point thinking, oh my God, that is too difficult for me. I'm not good at math. And then they kind of step back. And from there onwards, they have a mindset that math is not for them, it's too difficult, and they're not participating, and they're not even trying solving difficult math problems. And so with design thinking, and I heard that from teachers I'm working with, and also it's there in the research papers, when children learn design thinking, they actually learn, firstly, they confident in their capabilities and their ability to solve any problem, because they have a process they can follow. And they know that the first try is only a first try. And if they're going to fail, that's fine, they'll try again. And so when they encounter with challenging math problems, they feel comfortable trying it and looking into different ways of solving math problems, as they know they reach the solution. Even if it'll take them, I don't know, 3 or 4 different ideas and they fail along the way, they'll know that that's fine, they will find a solution. So definitely there is a direct relationship between using design thinking as a framework of teaching and learning and academic result and academic excellence in math and in other areas. And as I mentioned before, it helps children develop their creative thinking, empathy, open mind, flexible thinking, all of these wonderful skills that are required to thrive today and in the future. So some of the research papers have concluded and said that design thinking is the pedagogy for the 21st century, as it teaches children everything they need to learn in order to thrive today and in the future with all the unknown and complexities that we face. And what happens to teachers when they adopt design thinking? So a little story about that. When I started this journey of teaching children design thinking, I started that thinking about the children themselves. I didn't really think about the teachers. I thought, okay, how can I help children develop the skills they need to succeed today? And then I worked alongside with many teachers in the classroom. And often we will talk and I'll ask them, so how is it going? How is it going? How are your students responding? What do you see in terms of your student approach and in learning and their academic results, etc.? And teachers will tell me how their students are growing and learning and improving as a result of design thinking. And then one time when I was speaking with one of the teachers, I've asked him, is there something that surprised you about design thinking? And he looked at me and he said, you know what, there is one thing. And he said, you know what, it's not just transform my student thinking, it transformed the way I think and the way I teach in the classroom. And this is where, you know, it kind of got me by surprise because I didn't expect that response. And this is where I really understood the impact on teachers as well and how profound it is. Because he told me, and other teachers then later on told me, that it's shifting the way they teach, and it's shifting the way they design learning experiences for children, for their students. And it actually changes the whole approach to teaching, which is huge. And then I started receiving more and more feedback from teachers in terms of how it impacts their own teaching and what it's doing for them and how it's changing them. And another feedback I received was that it helps them, actually it makes the job easier, which again is not something I expected to hear, but this is a wonderful news because we know teachers are under a lot of stress. They have, it's a very busy life, being a teacher, very busy life at school, and they have a lot of pressures. And so if this makes their job easier, then that is just a wonderful bonus. So what they say in the teachers that learning design thinking and the double diamond process actually helps them, because now they know the process they need to follow with their students. They don't need to really think hard about what they need to do next, because they're just following the double diamond process when they work on different problems with their students. So they don't need to spend as much time on lesson planning and all of that, because it's all very clear for them now. They're just following that process. And another feedback that teachers come with is that it enables them to provide students with a voice and agency. Again, I don't know how it is at your end area in the globe, but in Australia, the Department of Education, they're talking a lot about voice and agency. But even though they're saying it, repeating it again and again, teachers don't know, okay, but what it means, how can we give student voice and agency? What does it mean for us in the classroom? And so with design thinking, finally, it opens the door to give your students voice and agency over the learning and to really empower your students. And so this really helps implement that desire to provide a learning environment that gives students voice and agency. And another feedback that keeps coming is that teachers use design thinking not just in the classroom for a particular subject to teach math or literacy or any other subject. It also helps them in dealing with so many other things like behavior issues, for example, behavior management. So they, whenever they have any problem in school, they look into the design thinking process and use that to solve a problem. So now when they have a behavior issue that they need to handle, they work on a solution with the students that present some issues or create some problems in the classroom. And they find a solution that fits that student. And so it really shifts the way teachers think across the board and the way they approach everything they do at school, which is wonderful. So my message to teachers across the globe is that you have the power to create a unique and innovative learning environment in your classroom. You can do it starting tomorrow, even with the many restrictions that this system is imposing on you. It's your teaching, it's your impact, and you can choose how you want to deliver your curriculum. And now what's next? Actually, I have something very exciting to share. As Glittering Minds, my organization, and the Global Innovation Field Trip, we are collaborating to bring to teachers the gift of innovation. And the gift of innovation is a package that teachers can purchase, and it enables them to facilitate a design thinking project in their classroom, similar to the one that I shared with you, and empower their student to drive change within the community. So for this year, for 2023, the project question we are delivering for teachers is how might we design a more sustainable school? And teachers who want to create that learning experiences in their classroom can do so. And they'll not only provide their students with voice and agency and develop the wonderful skills by facilitating this project, but they can also make a change in the school. They can also help the environment, make a more, design a more sustainable school. And their students will drive this change. And so it will empower the students to know that they can make a difference and they can make a change within the environment, and they can help planet Earth by doing so. So this is coming soon. It will be ready for elementary teachers towards the end of the month. And for high school teachers, this pack will be ready next month. So we'll communicate once it's ready. We'll send emails to everyone. And that's very exciting. And then you can come to a gift event and present what you've done, the changes you have implemented at your school as a result of this project. And I'm very excited about it, and I look forward to see these presentations. So this is it from me, and I'm happy to answer any question that you might have, that anyone might have.
Sure. So First of all, thank you so much, Ortal, for that incredible presentation. But Kelly, do you have any questions? I have one in mind, but if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead.
Oh, it sounds great. Well, Ortal, great presentation. I would actually also love to connect with you offline because I actually work with an organization called the Young Entrepreneur Institute. So I'd love to like sort of share resources and see if I can collaborate. But we have the same exact entrepreneurial mindset, you know, design thinking sort of mission that you do as well. So I think it's awesome what you're doing. And I was just kind of thinking like if listeners out there were interested in being a part of it or getting more information, is there a website or a way that they can join in all that you are doing?
Firstly, thank you, and definitely let's connect and have a chat and see how we can help children across the globe and teachers as well. Yeah, definitely. I always love to connect with others and have a conversation. I can put on, actually, maybe my next slide has that. Let me see. If not, I can put, oh, no. So I can put in the chat my email address. Can everyone see that actually? And you can maybe share it with everyone.
Okay.
And then I can share the website. Oh. So just a second. So this is my email address, and I'll just add the website. That you can explore. There is also a Glittery Minds YouTube channel if you want to see videos over there. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook if anyone wants to connect. I'm happy to connect. And so, yeah, feel free to get in touch.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Just such wonderful information and totally in agreement with the way that you're thinking. So I'll pass it to Perrin to ask a couple questions.
All right. So while I was listening to how this design thinking can be applied in like designing things for children, I'd like to ask a question. Are there any other aspects of a person's life where you can apply design thinking other than the profession of a teacher?
This is an excellent question. And the answer is yes, definitely. I'll give you a personal example. I'm using design thinking to design my own life on a personal level. So thinking about how I want my life to look like. And I'm using the double diamond to do so. And another example I can give you as a parent, I have 3 boys. And for the parents out there, you know that often there's so many challenges you encounter when you raise children. And so, yes, I definitely use design thinking to also help me solve problems at home or help my children on some area. So definitely I use design thinking for that as well. So you can use it broadly for so many ways. It's a way to find innovative solution to problems, whether it's a personal problem or a professional problem, or you want to use it as a teaching framework. There's so many ways you can use design thinking. It's really, once you learn it and you see the benefit of using that and how powerful it is, then you start to also be flexible with your thinking and applying it in different ways, because you see the many ways you can use it and the many ways it can benefit you. So definitely you can use it in so many different ways. Thank you for this wonderful question.
So design thinking is like learning something, for example, in music, and then you want to use that concept every time you play music. You learn design thinking and you're like, maybe I can use it here, maybe I could use it there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also because design thinking as part of the skill it's developed is creative thinking. And what is creative thinking, right? You take in one thing that is used in one area and you apply it somewhere else. It's part of the creative thinking. So this is where you start to merge and mush things and move them around. And it's the same with design thinking. You start to move it around and use it in different ways and mix it with something else, and just being creative about it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So here's another question. When did you come upon this design thinking? Did you like watch a YouTube video or like go on Facebook and saw a post about design thinking? Or is it something that you thought of like, what is there a way to teach children in a way that's fun and creative and also will teach them to collaborate with one another, and that's what you Google searched and then you came upon design thinking. So how did you come upon this design thinking concept?
You have excellent questions. Yeah, so I'll tell you a bit about my journey so you'll understand. So actually, I studied computer science. I started my career as a computer scientist, working for high-tech companies, developing computer algorithms, was in a completely different direction. It has nothing to do with education at all. And so I was working in the technology space for many years. And then in one of the companies I worked for, an opportunity arose to participate in a bootcamp about design thinking, and I was very curious about it. And so I jumped straight on this opportunity. And for 3 days, I was immersed in design thinking, and we learning by hands-on, working on a problem. And I just fell in love with it. I felt like this was what was missing in my life up until then, because it was a combination of everything I love doing, of solving problems, of being creative, of working with people, and coming up with innovative ideas. So I felt like, wow, this is home for me. This is what I want to do. And by that time, I was already a mom to 3 boys, and I watched their journey at school. And I spent actually a lot of time in the classroom. I volunteered in the classroom to see what's happening at school these days and what might have changed since I was a child and attending school. And to my surprise, even though the front looks a bit different in terms of what's in the classroom, they have technology, which wasn't there when I was studying, but the foundation is still the same. And I thought, wow, I have to help my children, prepare them to the different world and different future that awaits them. And then I thought, okay, I have to teach them design thinking. For me, it was a direct link between design thinking and children. And I wanted to teach all the children design thinking. And so I started by, I created a workshop on design thinking, which I facilitated school holiday programs for children. And I was amazed to see how immediately they connected with that, and they loved that because it felt so natural for them. It was about being creative without boundaries, without putting any boundaries around their thinking. And I still remember how in one of the first sessions I ran, a 9-year-old boy came to me when I was encouraging them to come up with ideas. And he said to me, "Can I come up with any idea that I want?" And I said, "Yes, of course, please come up with crazy ideas. I want to hear your wonderful ideas." And he was kind of shocked that he's allowed to come up with crazy ideas. And for me, it was sad that at the young age of 9 years old, children already have boundaries around their thinking. And that comes from our education system. And so I started in this manner, and I grew and grew and took it to schools. And this is how the whole thing started. So I didn't Google it. Luckily for me, I stumbled across design thinking. The universe was kind of putting it in my path. And that put everything together for me, and I found my passion and purpose. And I started this journey of teaching children design thinking and empowering educators and parents across the globe to use design thinking as a learning framework.
That's great. You have excellent questions, Perrin, because I too was interested to hear of Ortal's journey and how you got there. And it's just fascinating to learn, the different paths that people take. And I just recently worked with a group here in Ohio at a school, and a little along the same lines of the youth voice, where we do a lot of pitch challenges. So the kids, this was K through 8 here in the States. So the 8th graders were the oldest kids in a Catholic school. And so in the 8th grade, what they did was let them work in teams and with the lens of the administration, come up with different things that they'd like to change about their school. And then they pitched them to the administration, almost like your uniform example. And it's just really cool, I think, to see youth have a voice, be able to make changes in their own environment. And then, you know, I was thinking if they continue to do this for younger kids to realize, wow, you know, I can think about this. And when I'm a little bit older, I too can make changes. So lots of great things come from, you know, kids are just so smart and so intelligent, so curious and creative that, you know, they can change their environment and take problems and turn them into opportunities. So really love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. And I think it's all about providing them with the right environment. I agree, children are amazing, and often they're not given the credit they deserve. And sometimes I hear from teachers when they take the design thinking journey and start using that as a teaching framework, suddenly they say, oh my God, I didn't realize my students are so creative. And that's because we don't give them the opportunities to be creative, to come up with wonderful solutions. And so when we really teach them in this manner, and when we give them the opportunities to have a voice and to drive change within their environment, this is where they really shine, and we can see how wonderful they are. And I actually, when I see that, I have so much hope for our world, because, you know, there's so many problems in the world, but this young generation, they are amazing, and all they need is the right environment, and then they just thrive, and what they come up with is just amazing.
I agree with you. And to give them the confidence and the knowledge and the know-how, as you said, to think big and think outside the box and come up with some great solution to make some changes.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Perrin, do you have one last question, or Ortal, is there one last thing that you would like to let our audience know?
I want to encourage teachers. I know for some it might sound scary, maybe because we used to a teacher having all the control in the classroom, knowing exactly what's going to happen every minute of the day. And it can feel quite scary shifting to a different way of teaching, where you facilitated your student learning and you let them lead their learning. But I want to encourage you and say, your students are going to amaze you and you're going to enjoy it so much. So I think by adopting this way of teaching, you'll be a happier teacher and your student will be happier students, and then it's a win-win for everyone. So even if it sounds a bit scary for you to let your student lead their learning and give up that control in the classroom, know that you're going to embark on a wonderful adventure that's going to lead you into magical places. So I'm really encouraging teachers to give it a go.
Wow. Thank
Great.
you so much, Ortal, for your phenomenal presentation and also phenomenal answers to the questions. We still have around 2 minutes left before we move on to our next presenter. So I'd like to ask you just a fun little question. If you were to design, let's just say, your dream classroom, and I'm saying like anything is okay here, like you can have a zero gravity station. I'm saying anything. If you were to design a dream classroom for your children to learn in, how would you make it using this design thinking?
I'm actually thinking, and just coming to my head, there won't be a classroom at all. They're learning the real world outside in the real industry, not in a classroom at all. So if we want to take it to really extreme, I'm saying we don't need classroom. We have the real world that is your best environment to learn and to grow, right? So you can learn in the park, you can learn at the council. I don't know, if you go spend a day there, you can learn. If you go and spend a day at the coffee shop, learning how they operate and how they work and their challenges, learning at the bank. So my imagination say, use the world as your classroom. Don't confine your students in 4 walls.
I like that. That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic.